Hi dear viewers, this is Arash Kamali with another session of the website programming course on the Python programming language and Django framework. A very warm welcome from me. If you remember well, in the previous session we copied the HTML file into our own HTML file in our website or Django, but the problem with that was that none of the static or JavaScript codes loaded into the new project, and our site didn't have the appearance that it should, and it didn't look like a demo. So we need to correct the addressings, and that's what we're going to do in this session. Alright, to correct the addressings and move them to a static folder, because as you may remember, moving to the static folder front on my main app is what I do here. This also needs to be mentioned that in the setting .py, what we did is that we defined a static folder next to the project, but now I move the files into the static folder that is in my main app. I need to explain this again, I guess, the reason why we did so. Okay, it's very important because we can have separate apps so that we won't need to write an app again in other projects, that is, and be able to just copy an app in the new project. So we have the option to have a static and template folder on each app. And when we are preparing the site to set it up on a server, we use a certain code on the terminal, and Django integrates all the static files on all the apps into one folder and makes a static folder next to the project where we had defined for it, a place that we had set specifically for it. I just thought it necessary to remind you this, so that if you have some questions on your mind regarding this issue, you may have find your answer. Because each and every one of our apps can have separate folders, or all in all we make separate static or template files for each app, or we could share the same static and template in the first app and set up all the HTML or static files inside the same template. So pretty much those are the options available for us for the static folder, and Django integrates them and reads them. That is up to us totally how we designate that a static folder. Alright, to correct these addressings so that it reads them from the static folder, it doesn't make any difference on which app it is. It doesn't really matter. What matters is where we want to put it, so that when it is deploying it on the server using the code that we have, all these statics will be integrated into that folder next to our project. Alright, now on the first row, on the first HTML row that is of our code, we write load a static file. So on the first row of our HTML, we add this command to tell Django to load the static files for us. And so any files, pictures, or anything else that we use that is inside a static, we need to use the command load static files at the beginning of the HTML file. Alright, now we need to change the addresses. The most important changes are on the head, which include the appearance and the font on the side, and the JavaScripts are also here used to change the appearance or charting or tables on the site. And the rest of the body of the site can be the news pictures, which doesn't really matter. We can gradually incorporate them during the designing process because they will gradually be rectified. But the two parts that need to change are inside the head and before the completion of the body tag. This part at the bottom, all the addressing in the site need to be corrected from here. The addressing should change in this fashion that we just did, bracket 2 persons, and inside persons I write, this is the formatting for addressing. It should be a static, and inside the single quotation I should write the designated address of the file. For instance, here that I have written a static and have defined for it to load a static file. Automatically it will log jump into the static file folder, and I just need to write from the folder that we just made a slash the address of the picture, that we have used for our logo. That is, my address will change like this. Now all the addresses for my JavaScript codes and CSS codes change in this fashion. Alright, to make things easier, I make a copy from this code that we just addressed, and like this I replace them with other addresses of the pictures, and then any section of the addresses will be replacing this first section. I added after font so that it will be organized and formatted correctly. Alright, so what did we do? We set in the static folder front folder and the address that has been mentioned in the HTML. Yeah, like that. You see the HTML file. And there are other ways to make things easier, which are suitable for more professional levels, of course. For instance, there is a replace function on VS Code that we can use, and what it does is that it receives a code and replaces all the addresses that are href and src. The hrefs and srcs need to change. That will be useful when you become more professional, of course, and using them at this level would just confuse things. But you need to be very careful, because if you make a mistake with this function, it is going to mess with your frame and change most of the codes that it doesn't recognize. So we'd better right now do it manually. Now we have done the head addressing, and now we go for JavaScript. Would be next. Our JavaScript, these files addresses need to be organized. They need to be set in order like we did with the previous ones, and this is pretty much a routine process that we keep doing while addressing the code. Not very complicated, but nevertheless a little mistake could get things really confusing. In order to do the copy pasting faster, I use the combinations commands on keyboard, Control X for cutting and Control V for pasting. Now I refresh the home page to see what changes have been applied on my website. Alright, now the framework has been organized. As I mentioned, the CSS and JavaScript addresses are right now, but now the pictures of my post has not opened yet. All the addressings of the pictures need to be set in order so that they open correctly. If when you open the file and prepare it, you go into let's say the terminal and check it, it will tell you which files have not been found. For instance, image post 20, for instance in JPG, and all these have not been found. So you should address all the files so that when you open the site there would be no not found file, and all the files will be found easily. Okay, and the addressings will be correct, so make sure you do that.